Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Who remembers the pattern of who Jesus talks to in this part of Luke's Gospel? Okay, do it again. So Jesus talks to the disciples, and he talks to the crowds, and in between each of them, he talks to the Pharisees. Today, he's talking to the disciples. So today's gospel is full of metaphorical statements from Jesus as he answers his followers when they ask him to increase their faith. First of all, isn't the increasing of their personal faith something they should be doing for themselves? Why are they expecting Jesus to do it for them? Do we expect Jesus to do it for us? I think we all know at this stage in our lives that just sitting on the couch on a Sunday morning, or any morning for that matter, waiting patiently or not so patiently for eternal salvation to just be delivered to us like a pizza or an order from Grubhub is not really how Christianity works. We need to be aware of this, especially after a summer that has been filled with readings stressing repeatedly that whether we like it or not, there is a cost to discipleship. As I've mentioned before, most preachers avoid this uncomfortable reality because it is, well, unpopular. And we don't want to be handing out any bad news. However, sometimes this is hard to avoid, especially these days as society more and more wants everything to be dished out generously with little or no consequence. It seems that half the world is in a constant state of depression over current events, while the other half could care less. They're too busy taking selfies. Hard to believe that Pollyanna, the fictitious teenager who was always cheerful and constantly optimistic, was conceived of by American author Eleanor H. Porter over 100 years ago. In 1913, not long before the arrival of the Great Depression. Back to the Gospel, where we pick up today already 5 verses into chapter 17 of Luke. Now, we've missed something, and what we've missed in the first 4 verses, one could argue is actually pretty important. There's a lot going on in these 4, where Jesus is telling the disciples that there will always be temptation in the world, and that sin is not going away anytime soon. He then tells them that if somebody wrongs them, they should forgive them. Not once, not twice, but again and again, however many times it takes. And it is to this statement that one of the disciples responds to Jesus saying, we can't really do this with our current level of faith. We're going to need a lot more. So just give it to us, please. I'm guessing Jesus is pretty frustrated by this request. And if he didn't already know it, he certainly does now, that these guys don't really get it. And these are the disciples as Luke portrays them. Not the brightest. But Jesus knows that this is what he has to work with, and despite their lack of understanding, it could be worse. It certainly was significantly worse if you look at the way Mark portrays these guys in his gospel. Mark sees them as being pretty dim. In his short but powerful gospel, there are only two entities that fully recognize Jesus as the Messiah, and it is the most unlikely of characters. They are the demon in chapter 1 and one of the Roman soldiers who watched Jesus die in chapter 15. Luke's opinion of the same men is a little higher, but not by much. So Jesus replies by comparing their faith to that of a mustard seed, a contrast he makes both here and in the Gospel of Matthew with the well-known parable, the kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is smaller than all the seeds, but when it is grown, it is greater than all of the herbs and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air can come and lodge in its branches. If this were today, Jesus might say, if you make a single mark with a ballpoint pen, that is all the faith you're going to need to move mountains. But in Jesus' time, there were no ballpoint pens. Scribes were writing on parchment or papyrus with reeds. So he uses the mustard seed. Now, if you're like me, well, hopefully you're not, but if you're like me and you love to cook Indian food, you probably are aware of what a mustard seed looks like. And while professional magicians have beautiful helpers, I'm going to ask my lovely assistant, Father Mike, to show you what a mustard seed really looks like. I'm just curious. Hold your hand up if you've seen a mustard seed. Yeah, about half, or maybe more than half. Give it a good shake, Father Mike. I mean, they are really, really small. And really, really hot. It doesn't take any of those to take your curry to a whole new level. I know. I've put too many in before. We'll give Father Mike just a chance to get to the And when you toast them in oil, they get even hotter. But look how tiny they are. She's seen them. They're just super, super small. And as we know from the parable of the mustard seed, this tiny, tiny speck, when planted and nourished, will grow into one of the mightiest of all bushes. Jesus is telling the disciples that the size, the amount of one's faith does not matter, because faith is not judged by its size. In fact, it shouldn't really be judged at all, at least not by other people. And besides, how do you calculate a person's faith? I'm not aware of any tangible measuring system for quantifying faith. What we do know is the disciples are asking Jesus to make theirs bigger. What really matters in the end is how real, how genuine a person's faith is, and what you do with that faith. And this begs the question, are we cultivating our faith? Are we nurturing it? Are we encouraging it to grow? And are we allowing it to gain momentum? faith is probably the most important aspect of Christianity, and the ability to implement it is the most powerful item in the spiritual toolbox that each of us possesses. After all, we worship a God who most, if not all of us, have never seen. And just to believe in him requires faith. However, just as the words of Eucharistic prayer C that we are using these days states that there is evidence of our God at work in the world about us. And despite never coming face to face yet with the Creator, the chances are very good that we have seen the effects of the Holy Spirit moving through our lives. Even though faith is not really measurable, in particular within the ethereal realm of spirituality, nevertheless, the disciples are asking Jesus to increase theirs. And he replies by telling them that it's not the size that matters, and that even the smallest amount of faith is a powerful tool. It is from today's gospel, coupled with Matthew 17:20, that the phrase, faith can move mountains, comes from. However, Jesus isn't saying that if we have enough faith, we can do anything we want, like fly, or reverse the effects of catastrophic events. He isn't saying that if we believe hard enough, we can accomplish things that defy the laws of physics or gravity. Truth is, faith is not some sort of magical power. Simply put, to possess Christian faith means that we must place our trust in God, but not blindly. We do it with the confidence that he will fulfill his promises to us, his children. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.